All right, deep divers, buckle up. Today, we're grappling with a giant John Locke.
And specifically,
hmm
his second treatise of government. People throw his name around, but we're doing a deep dive on what he really said.
Exactly. And trust me, his ideas are anything but dusty old history. We're talking individual rights, the role of government stuff that's still debated like crazy today.
Right, his ideas are baked into the way we think about these things, even if we don't realize it.
Okay, so to kick things off, we got to start with Locke's idea of the state of nature.
Right, his jumping off point.
This isn't about, like, living off the grid or anything. Picture this. No governments, no laws, just humans hanging out, being human in their most natural state. Sounds kind of chaotic, right?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? A real Lord of the Flies situation.
Right, total free-for-all, but here's where Locke throws us a curveball. He didn't see it that way at all.
Not a complete free-for-all, no. He believed that even without written laws and presidents and all that, there'd still be a natural law guiding us.
A natural law. So, like, some kind of built-in moral code that we'd just, I don't know, automatically follow.
Kind of. He called it the law of reason. Basically, he believed our own logic, our own sense of right and wrong, would tell us how to act.
Okay, so let me see if I'm following. Even without a cop around, I wouldn't steal my neighbor's car because my own brain would be like, dude, that's messed up.
That's the gist of it. And it's not just about being nice, it's deeper than that. Locke believed humans are inherently equal.
Equal. So even back then, he was all about equality.
He was getting there. He believed we were all God's workmanship, created with the same inherent rights. No one's born with the right to boss anyone else around.
Interesting. But hold on, even if we all have this inner moral compass, wouldn't there still be like disagreements, conflicts, people messing up?
Oh, absolutely. Locke addresses that. He talks about something called the state of war.
Oh boy, here we go. State of war. Sounds intense. So what's that all about?
It's what happens when someone violates that natural law, that inherent equality we were talking about.
Yeah.
They're basically declaring, my rights are more important than yours, and that's when things can get messy.
Right, because if there's no government, no police force who steps in to stop them.
Exactly. This is one of those places where Locke gets a little, well, let's just say he was writing in a different time.
Oh, how so?
Well, he gives an example in the second treatise. Let's say someone steals your horse.
A horse. Okay, getting a very Wild West vibe here.
Right, so someone steals your horse and there's no sheriff around. Locke argues that in that situation, you'd actually be justified in punishing that person yourself. Maybe even, well,
No way. He's not saying you could. Like,
let's just say he believed you had a right to defend your property, even if it meant taking extreme measures.
wow. Okay. I can see why people are still talking about this guy centuries later. It's a bit much, but I guess it does make you think. So basically, he's saying that without some kind of system, some kind of authority, things could get pretty chaotic.
Precisely. And that chaos, that potential for conflict, is a big part of why Locke thinks humans eventually decide, you know what, maybe a government isn't such a bad idea after all.
So let me get this straight. Things are kind of wild in this state of nature. But at least you've got all this freedom. Why would anyone willingly sign up for a government, for rules and being told what to do?
Well, Locke believed it all came down to one word, and it might surprise you. Property.
Property. Wait, so he's just saying we all just want a big pile of stuff and the government helps us get it.
Not quite. He thought about property way more broadly. It wasn't just your stuff, like your house or your horse. It also meant your life, your freedom, basically everything that makes you you.
Okay, so like my right to choose what I want to do, my right to like live my life the way I see fit, that's part of this property idea.
Exactly. And Locke argued that all of that, it's inherently yours just by virtue of being human. It doesn't come from a king or a government. It's just yours.
I can get behind that. Sounds pretty good so far.
It does. But there's a snag. Remember that chaos we were talking about in the state of nature? Well, even if you have this inherent right to property, who's to say someone can't just come and take it from you?
True, if there's no one to call the cops on.
Right. There's no court system, no judge to settle disputes. It's all kind of up in the air.
And that's where government comes in. It's like the referee who makes sure everyone plays by the rules.
Exactly. It provides the stability and enforcement that's missing in that state of nature.
But, and this is crucial, Locke doesn't think just any old government will do.
There's a catch, isn't there always?
There is. He believed a government is only legitimate if it's formed through the consent of the governed.
Consent. So, like, people have to actually agree to be governed. They can't just be forced into it. Exactly. He said people choose to give up some of their freedom, to accept some limits, in exchange for the protection and stability that government provides. It's like a trade-off.
Hmm. Giving up some freedom for security. It's a deal we still grapple with today, am I right?
Absolutely. We wrestle with these questions constantly, but back in Locke's day, this idea of consent, it was revolutionary. Most rulers believed they had a God-given right, divine right to rule.
But Locke saying, hold on, the power comes from the people.
Right. It's the people who grant the government its power. It's the very idea behind modern democracy, and we have Locke to thank for putting it on the map.
Okay, so we've got our government. It's gained some limits on its power, but
Yeah.
what happens if it just goes rogue?
You're talking about tyranny, right? When the government itself becomes the problem.
Exactly. It's like that whole power corrupts thing. So what did Locke say about that?
Well, this is where he gets really radical. Remember all that talk about natural rights, inherent equality, consent of the governed? He said if a government starts trampling on all of that, if it becomes tyrannical, the people actually have a right to revolt.
Whoa. He's talking about overthrowing the government, like full-on revolution.
He is, and it wasn't something he took lightly. Locke argued that the right to revolution is a last resort, justified only when there's clear evidence the government is acting against the people it's supposed to serve.
So it's not just about disagreeing with a policy or two. It has to be a fundamental breach of trust.
Right. It's about the government becoming a threat to the very rights it was created to protect. It's like that old saying, give me liberty or give me death.
Okay, that's a pretty intense quote to drop in there, but I see your point. It's about a serious threat to freedom, to life itself.
Exactly. And Locke believed that in those extreme cases, the people have a right to defend themselves, even if it means dismantling the government and starting over.
Wow. So how does this all connect to us today? I mean, we're not exactly running around with muskets and tri-corner hats
Yeah.
anymore.
You'd be surprised. Locke's ideas are more relevant than ever. We still debate the limits of government power, individual liberties, the idea of a social contract. All of these things trace back to Locke.
It's like his thinking is woven into the fabric of our society even centuries later.
Exactly. Look around, we see echoes of Locke's ideas everywhere. Protests against authoritarianism, debates about privacy and surveillance, discussions about the role of global institutions, they all grapple with questions Locke was wrestling with back in the 17th century.
It makes you realize how far-reaching his influence has been. It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
It is, but as influential as he was, Locke didn't have all the answers. In a way, he left us with even more questions to ponder.
How so? What kind of questions?
Well, he gives us this framework for thinking about the relationship between the individual and the state, the power of consent, the right to resist tyranny. But it's up to us to figure out what that means in our own time, in our own context.
So he gives us the tools, but we have to do the work.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of engaging with a thinker like Locke. He doesn't just give us easy answers. He makes us think critically about the world around us, about our place in it, about the kind of society we want to live in.
Well said. Well, deep divers, that about wraps up our deep dive into John Locke's second treatise of government. We covered a lot of ground today: the state of nature, the purpose of government, limits on power, and even the right to revolution. We hope you found it insightful, thought-provoking, maybe even a little bit revolutionary. Until next time, keep asking those tough questions and dive deep into the ideas that have shaped our world.